Tonight, Superman gets a brand new superpower because Geoff Johns thinks he has the pull to make that stick. Grayson shows that he actually is the most goodest boy across the entire DC universe. And Earth 2 gives a surprisingly and disturbingly realistic look at a man and his abusive, cheating helmet. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 179 of the Not-So-New 52. I am your host and it has been an eventful past few weeks. I mean, maybe out in the world, I don't know. I have effectively cut myself off from every single major news source. I have no idea what's happening out there. But for me, personally, talking about comics that came out 10 years ago, man, I have it rough, you know? Like, geez. Last week was absolutely packed. For anyone who didn't check it out, we did the Multiverse Guidebook issue, which ate up like 15 minutes on its own right. And then like 16 other books besides that. So it was a bit of a packed week here. But finally, we have a little bit of a reprieve. There were only 13 books this week. And I don't think there's anything that I really want to say except... based off of the analytics that I've been seeing on my side, for the past month or so, we've been getting a lot of new viewers. Not maybe to this show specifically, but anybody who has been watching the YouTube channel, you'll know there's a bunch of different shows, or I should say one other show, and then a bunch of chopped up versions of that one other show that are uploaded there. And we've been getting a lot of new viewers, so I just thought I'd say, hey, hi, how's it going? Glad you could join us. This is the Not-So-New 52. I talk about comics that came out 10 years ago, because for some reason I thought that'd be a good idea. The only other thing I wanted to bring up for anybody who's new here, especially if you're watching the video version, is I got these stacks of books on my desk. These are the trade paperbacks that I read, and every episode I add one more to these stacks. So there are 179 books on these stacks right now, but the problem being is that I have a vertical height limit, and I kind of hit it. Like, both of these stacks are pretty much at the edge of the frame. So I don't know what to do to continue to have the visual indication of progression throughout this series. Obviously, I don't need it. This is a mostly audio show. I highly doubt that any of you are even looking at me right now. If so, you missed me flipping the bird to you for like 30 straight seconds about 10 seconds ago. You clicked on a bit too late. And now you were realizing that was a lie. I wasn't actually doing that. Anyway. Yeah, so I don't know what to do with that. If anybody has any suggestions as to how I can continue to show progression via stacking of books, maybe I could put some more like in the middle here, but then you wouldn't see all of this. And clearly this is the draw. This is the reason. I can't even say it with a straight face. All right, anyway, comics coming out this week. I hope you enjoy the show, by the way, for any new viewers. Comics coming out this week, we have, in no particular order here, Detective Comics, Grayson, Action Comics, Superman, Green Lantern, Aquaman and the Others, Earth 2, Green Arrow, Lobo, Swamp Thing, and then our 3 weeklies of Batman Eternal, Future's End, and World's End. Nothing here is an event. Nothing here huge is going on. I will say, if you have not been checking out Swamp Thing, I will say this every month on the week where it comes out, that book is amazing. Go back and check it out from like any point. The Snyder part, the Charles Soule part, like wherever you want to jump in. It's a fantastic book, and I love it with every passing issue. So yeah, that's basically this week's episode. We start off every week in the Bat family because that's like half of DC's output, and this week will be no different. So yippee-ki-yay. Detective Comics number 39, written by Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato, art by Francis Manapul. So last issue, Anarchy's doing a whole bunch of stuff. He sent out a bunch of masks, and then a cop goes to shoot a person in a mask and ends up shooting the wrong person in a mask, an innocent boy, and they crowd around frames Batman for it. So this issue picks up with Bullock being essentially carjacked by Batman. He's got a batarang to his throat, and he's like, everyone's looking for you, Batman. And he's like, yeah, we all know that your partner took the shot and you're just blaming me. And he's like, hey, that's not on me. I told her not to take the shot. And also, like, yeah, I know it wasn't like you. I get that. But things are going crazy out there. And if the police have one more bad thing against them, it's going to be riots in the street. To which point Batman points over the Gotham skyline and is like, unlike now, as everything's on fire. So we see little vignettes of everyone like freaking out. Most people are resorting to crime. Some people are doing heroics wearing the masks, but it's not nearly enough. And he's like, look, if we're going to stop all this, I need you to work with me, Bullock. So then we cut to 2 days prior to that, and we see Batman visiting the kid who got shot in the hospital, and he's like, oh yeah, this is city, it's falling apart, Alfred, what am I supposed to do? And Alfred's like, Indo, Master Wayne. Then we cut over to 1 day ago, and he's looking at the mask, and he's like, it's all connected to the Mad Hatter stuff, and like those kids we found, and like, I don't know how, I don't know why, but it definitely is. And Alfred says, oh, by the way, Batgirl said she's restoring some of the data that Anarchy deleted, to which that spikes something in Bruce's mind where he's like, oh, I got it. So we then see simultaneous to that, Bullock and his partner Yips are up on the roof, and Yip is like, hey, look, I'm a rookie. I am just doing what I am told to do by the upper brass. Like, I'm willing to testify it wasn't me, but, if I don't have to, I'm not going to. And Bullock's like, hey, yeah, look, I get it. It sucks. Like, lucky break for you. It sucks for everybody else involved here. And she's like, okay, but can I trust you, or are you not going to rat on me? And he's like, nah, I'm not a rat. Whatever. We're all good. But, like, he's clearly not happy about it. We then see that Bullock, this part's a little confusing to me. Bullock was trying to get some information. He took fingerprints off of the photo that he passed over to that guy that Anarchy killed, Jeb Lester. And in running the prints on that, he was directed to some other case that when he opened up the evidence box for it, it was all gone. So somebody's trying to cover up some tracks there. And him and Bullock and Batman go for a drive up, and they realize there's something going on with the blue house. I don't recall this being a thing, but something about a blue house is going on. And Batman's like, look, our two investigations are related. Like, I found a bunch of bodies. I couldn't ID them, but now you're telling me you've got a list of like missing kids. Clearly, these are the same things. So I've got a way to ID them now. And they drive up into the mountains outside Gotham to this blue house, and it's like, this is where it all started. This is a big deal. So they go in, and Bullock throws out like, okay, so why would Anarchy kill Lester? Is it something to do with like Mad Hatter, and Mad Hatter's like the minds behind all this? And he's like, nah, Mad Hatter's an idiot. Cut to Mad Hatter in Arkham as he's dancing around with a pillow, calling it Alice, and he's like, oh yes, I did learn some new moves since we last danced. And then all of a sudden the floor gives way underneath him, and Anarchy is there with a couple of his goons, and it's like, hey, Hatter, it's been a while, remember me? And Hatter's like, oh, it's you. And he says, my Alice, which I don't know if that means that this is a girl underneath there, but he seems very hulky, so I don't think so. We then see inside the blue house, there are a bunch of people wearing Anarchy masks. One guy gets the drop on Bullock. Bullock ends up shooting him, but he gets a knife to the shoulder. And he's like, hey, Batman, I got stabbed. Meanwhile, Batman's fighting off like 7 of them. And he's like, hold on, Bullock, I'll be right there. So Batman gets a knife through the hand. We cut back over to Mad Hatter, who's in the trunk of a car and being driven somewhere. And he has no idea where he's going, but the trunk is littered with masks and apparently gasoline as well, which is seemingly a bad sign. So back during the fight scene, Bullock is trying to get a clear shot to help Batman out, but he's unable to, and it's losing a lot of blood. But while he's lining up the shot, he sees a portrait behind Batman. And as Batman finally punches his way out through everybody else, Bullock is about to pass out from blood loss, and he's crawled across the room. Batman's like, hey, man, don't speak. We got to get you sealed up here. This is a big problem. You're losing a lot of blood. And Bullock just points to the portrait that is hanging off of the wall at this point. And inside the picture is not only who I believe is Jeb Lester, but also Mad Hatter. and a young girl who seemingly Mad Hatter is looking at. And this was, I guess, the previous place of employment for all of them. This was like some sort of foster home or something. So Batman's putting it together, and we see him start to make his way out of the Blue House as, meanwhile, Anarchy and a bunch of Anarchy's goons drive Mad Hatter out into the middle of, it seems like, the Blue House area, and he's like, all right, time for you to be held accountable for what you did. You ready to die, Jervis? And that's where we leave off. I mean, okay. I like the idea of Anarchy being someone who, like, one of the villains messed with and, like, did something bad to. That's fine for me. I just don't understand how it really ties into the Anarchy idea of, like, oh, you know, the systems have failed and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. I said this last time. This doesn't feel like Anarchy. This doesn't feel like someone who's, like, politically motivated and has this idea of, like, tear down the system because the system's corrupt. It just feels more like another guy, like another anti-hero that crosses the line into villainous territory because he doesn't go by Batman's code. You know, it just, I don't know. There's a lot to it. Art-wise, it's fine. I like the bits with Bullock and Batman teaming up. It does a good bit. There's one point where Bullock cracks a joke as they break into the Blue House because he has to, like, rappel down a rope. And they do a good job of showing Batman smirking while still appearing serious. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird arc. I think this has just been a recurring thing in this book where I just start off with a lot of promise and then it just gets so lost in the weeds of it that I don't find myself to be really that engaged. So I'm going to give this one, I'll give this one a 7. Saying it less than that would be dishonest in terms of objective, but subjectively, I'd probably be closer down to like a 6.5 or something. Grayson number 7, written by Tim Seeley and Tom King, art by Stephen Mooney. So last issue we had the brain that is one of the organs they're looking for has been hijacked by the Fist of Cain, who are going to use it to make a peace rally turn into a murderous bloodbath. And also Grayson got abducted by Midnighter, who stole his Hypnos implant. And then the gardener, who's like the Batman to Midnighter's Nightwing, is telling him, like, yeah, you're stuck here for a while. So we open up with some fighter jets outside of, I think it's Israeli airspace. They pick up something's coming in fast, but they can't see it. And then all of a sudden, the jet carrying matron, aka Helena, zooms on by and just like, all right, well, I'm in their airspace. We haven't found Grayson yet, and that's concerning me. And we see she's talking to Mr. Minos and a couple of, like, the scientists for Spiral as well. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. We'll get there. We'll figure out the Grayson thing. But for right now, we do really need to focus on the whole not letting a giant war thing happen. So at that point, one of the scientists chimes in and says, hey, his Hypnos implant is online, but I can't get a lock on his GPS coordinates. And so Helena says, get me the last 5 minutes, like download it right into my brain. And they're like, okay, but it's going to hurt. So she does it, and she's able to see Grayson. And remember, this is supposed to be from his perspective, so that's already weird. In a cell, he's like punching, kicking the glass, trying to get out. And in the reflection of the cell, she's able to see that the person with the Hypnos is, of course, Midnighter. And she's like, okay, if that's the case, I need you, Spiral, to upload all of the information we have about this Fist of Cain thing into Midnighter's Hypnos. And they're like, he's an enemy combatant. But then Mr. Minos is like, but he also worked with us, and he is, you know, we share a moral code. He just doesn't like the way we do it. He'll want to stop this whole bloodbath thing too. Go ahead, upload it. So up in the garden, Grayson's pounding on the glass. The gardener's just like, you're not going to be able to escape. Like, look, he's not going to believe anything you say to him. I represent truth and love and everything good in the world to him, while you represent lies and deceit. You are the worst in his eyes. And as he's walking away from the cell, unable to hear what Grayson's saying about the bloodbath, his implant starts messing with him, and he's like, oh, I gotta suck this thing out ASAP, it's not working for me. So we go to Israel, and we see one of the men getting falafel, and he doesn't pay for his meal, and as the falafel guy is like, wait a minute, hold on, they're like, oh, we'll track him down, what does he look like? And he's like, I can't remember, he looked like a man, I guess. We see Helena arrives, and she's like, all right, I'm ready. We still need to figure out where the brain is, though. But go ahead and share all of the data from my head into Midnighter. I'm ready for it. And she's like, okay, it's going to be even more painful than before. So the scientist presses go. Midnighter is about to suck the Hypnos out when all of a sudden he's just hit with this massive wave of pain and anger. And we see him, like, bleeding on the floor. He's like, oh God, there's going to be a bloodbath. I have to do something. Gardner, open the door. Send me down there. Gardner, why aren't you answering me? And meanwhile, Gardner's talking to Grayson, just being like, you're wasting your mind. I'm not going to change my mind. And Grayson's basically like, look, I get what you're saying, that mankind kind of sucks and we need something to like shock us back into our senses and whatnot, but this isn't the way to do it. This is really bad. And then he makes this long tortured metaphor about how, acrobatics, you need a net. Batman was his net, and it stopped him from going down a darker path. Midnighter, it's the same thing. Gardner is the net to Midnighter. They're trying to help him. And Midnighter's still just freaking out, like, come on, door now, please. And you see Gardner like, oh God, what have I done? So we see that there's a concert going on at this peace rally. Helena's trying to muscle her way up to the stage. She's like, okay, I got to figure out what this is. And we see the dude up on stage who's a straight up like Bono type. He's like, oh, I wear these white gloves so that I can give peace to the world with my open hands. But then he takes off one of the gloves and it says Cain on his knuckles. And Helena's like, oh God, they're the fist of Cain. So he says this thing of like, oh, the world, it's our swollen numbers. I know you have it in you, Tel Aviv. And he lifts up this planet with a peace symbol painted over it, and inside is the brain. So it starts infecting everybody in the crowd. They all start murdering each other. Helena is weakened because of the hypno stuff, so she's under a psychic barrage of all this hate and anger. She's not able to put up with it. And then all of a sudden, door opens up. Grayson and Midnighter step out, and Grayson's like, okay, we just got to go get the brain. No big deal. No killing anybody. And Midnighter's like, don't give me orders, man. So, but he says like, fine, well, I'll see what I can do. So Midnighter's on crowd control while Grayson's trying to get up to the stage. He sees the dude holding the earth, clearly acting evil. And he's like, well, that must be the guy. And he's pissed off because he's like, man, these guys are on my playlist. I now got to find new songs for my workout routine. And all of a sudden he comes across Helena and she's like, hey, you look like you're filled with rage and anger. And she starts swatting out at him like, you abandoned me. I hate you. I hate you so much. And she's like, whoa, hey, hold on. Slow down. What's going on? She's like, I can't think straight. My mind's a blur. Everything is hate and anger. And I just, and then she kisses him. And she's like, okay, that cleared my mind for at least a little bit. I'm going to stay out on the edges. You, however, do not have a hateful bone in your body. You can get right up on there and you're not going to try to kill anybody. You're that strong. Go get him, Grayson. He's like, yeah, okay, we're going to talk about that. So we see Midnighter manages to disarm the falafel guys from earlier. He manages to get a knife from one of them, and he's like, this is a nice knife. And he sees the dude up on stage, just holding the brain above his head, and he's like, well, I'm not going to give up this chance. So he throws the knife at him, and just as before it's about to hit him, Grayson jumps in, kicks it out of the way, says, no killing, and then he sweeps the singer off his feet, manages to dodge the guitarist who hits at him as well, basically takes out the whole band. And as he's doing so, we see Helena goes after this one old man who's being beaten down. And she's like, sir, are you okay? And the guy hits her across the face with a cane. And turns out that this is Fleischer, who is the guy who I think wrote the crime Bible. He's in charge of the Fist of Cain. And he's choking out Helena, just being like, oh, this is what must be done. And then he gets shot from the side. And it turns out that falafel dude from earlier, who didn't pay, is Mr. Minos, who's here and takes the shot. So Grayson busts open the globe, pulls out the brain, and he's like, I can hear it whispering to me, telling me to let go of my humanity, to just kill and hurt people. But I just know that would be doing exactly what it wanted, so I calmed my mind and I spread around empathy instead. We see it cut forward in time. He's talking to Batman, just recounting how the mission ended. He's like, yeah, I thought about everything I have, my family, my net, and I changed the brain's mind. I changed the mind of the mind into believing in hope and goodness. And Batman's like, you know I'm supposed to strike fear into the hearts of criminals, right? You're not like helping my image with this. And he's like, yeah, sorry about that. So we then cut over to Mr. Minos, and he's like, hey, you guys did a great job at that concert. Really wish I would have been there, but I definitely wasn't. Anyway, Fist of Cain's dealt with. Now we got to go back to dealing with Checkmate, so have fun with that. And as Helena and Grayson are walking back to their rooms, Helena's like, man, I had such a killer headache. I don't remember anything pretty much after the point where you showed up. And Grayson's like, so do you remember passionately making out with me? And she's like, very funny, and goes into her room. So the last thing we get is Midnighter up in the garden. The gardener's like on her knees, just like, please, you have to understand, I wanted to make a better world. And Midnighter's like, you lied to me? You are the better world thing has been used by every mad scientist and villain on the planet Earth, so like you're no better than them. And I'm not like Grayson. I can see things coming. Like, and I know a better world is not around the corner. And we see, as he steps through a door leaving the gardener, we also see inside Mr. Minos' office where there are at least 3 different copies of him just lounging about doing random busy work, I guess. So, yeah, that's that. It's a solid issue. I enjoy it, but it's kind of, I don't know, hokey's the wrong word. But it feels like someone's trying to convince me that Dick Grayson is Jesus Christ himself. You know? It just feels like, everybody falls prey to this. Nobody is safe except for you, Dick Grayson. You're the best. Like, I don't know. Maybe I just like a bit more, not minutia, but I like a bit more of like the grays of like, not everybody's perfect. Like even Batman, every once in a while he talks about like, I gotta fight the urge to kill some of these people sometimes because like I want to do that. Like it's the same sort of thing here where you make him out to be too squeaky clean and it almost feels like, all right, well, like if he's gonna be that much of a Boy Scout, is it really like interesting character wise? It is. I like the writing. It's just, I don't know. It just rubbed me the wrong way, the fact that, like, a thing that could make an entire peace rally try to kill each other couldn't make Dick Grayson even, like, kind of want to hurt somebody. So, yeah, I'm going to say this one is a 7.5. It's still very good. I kind of want this organ thing to wrap up, because we've been doing that since the beginning of the series. I just want to see what having all of the organs really results in, or at the very least, some sort of consequence there. So hopefully we'll get that soon. But 7.5 for this. Superman number 38, written by Geoff Johns, art by John Romita Jr. I almost mixed those two up. So last issue, we went to Ulysses' world, and Superman was like, you can't stay here, we gotta go save the Earth. And Ulysses was like, okay, but we gotta save this planet too. And then through a series of very quick explosions, Ulysses' planet blew up. And he didn't take it well. So we see him just beating the crap out of Superman, punching him through like tons of asteroids and stuff, saying like, I trusted you. You said that if I sent your people back to Earth, that you would save mine too. And instead, you blew it all up. All these people who raised me from birth, who loved me despite the fact I was human. You suck, Superman. You made me destroy my own home. And so he keeps on punching the ever-loving crap out of Superman. We see the people who return to home are like, what happened? Why are we back here? Oh God, we lost our paradise. This sucks. Everything's awful. And as they're looking around, trying to figure out what's going on, in crashing comes Superman and Ulysses, like right through the middle of the building. It's about to crush most of the crowd beneath, and Superman comes in at the last second and sends it off to the side. And they're like, Superman, what happened? We were about to go to Utopia. And he's like, look, I get it. Utopia sounds cool and all, but it doesn't exist. There never was a utopia. If you guys have problems, I feel bad for you, son, but you gotta solve them here. You know, you just stop looking for an easy out. You have to find help and hope here. And then Ulysses punches him again. So They end up in the woods outside of Metropolis, like way outside of Metropolis. And Superman's like, I don't want to fight you. And he's like, okay, then watch me take out your planet the same way that you made me take out mine. I have all of the energy of my planet inside of me. And now I'm going to trigger the same effect inside the Earth's core. And Superman's like, what about your parents? He's like, let them die. I don't care. We're all going to die together. So Superman starts blasting him with heat vision, saying, like, I have to stop you. And Ulysses is like, I have energy absorption, dude. It ain't gonna help you. And so Superman continues blasting, but that thing that happened before where he loses a bit of control and it starts coming out stronger. And Ulysses is like, what are you doing, man? And he just keeps letting it come out stronger and stronger until finally it's not coming out of his eyes anymore. It starts erupting from his body. We see a giant plume, a circle coming out, an orb of just fiery energy, and it's hitting wave after wave. Electricity is forming, and we see Superman's just blasting back Ulysses with all of this energy coming from every cell in his body. And as he's about to lose his footing, Ulysses is like, I was just trying to save my home. And then Superman manages to burn his own armor off with all of this energy as he knocks Ulysses back in one final blow. And it knocks out Ulysses, it knocks out Superman, and somebody comes up and says, Superman, everything's going to be all right. And when he comes to, he's awake in the Batcave. Batman's sitting there like, hey, Clark. And he's like, how'd I get here? He's like, I brought you here. And Superman's like, I just remember I knocked him out with like heat vision. Was there an earthquake or something? And Batman's like, nah, man, you exploded. And he explains, look, your power set involves a lot of energy things coming out of your eyes. Turns out that's not the full extent of it. You can expel energy from every cell on your body. And that's what you did. He says you were created a solar flare, a super flare. So new power, good job. And he's like, oh man, I didn't know what was happening. I just couldn't control my powers. He's like, yeah, and you passed out. I've never seen you pass out before. And then he's like, okay, but what happened to Ulysses? He's like, oh, he's in a cell. He's under watch. Don't worry about it. We put him in a cell that like Parasite's supposed to be in. So he's fine. Don't worry about it. And Superman's like, but he's not a villain. Like, he's just misled. And it's like, I get what you're saying, but like he kind of is. Superman's like, well, not like an Arkham villain, you know what I mean. So at that point, Alfred comes forward and said, like, sir, I tried to iron your cape, but like it didn't work. And he's like, yeah, it's Kryptonian fabric, it doesn't work. And he's asking where his armor is, and he's like, well, you burned it off. Whatever's left is what you're wearing right now, man. He's like, okay, I'm gonna need a shirt. So Batman offers to give him a lift over to Stryker's Island where Ulysses is being held, and he's like, oh, I could fly there. And Batman's like, no, you cannot. You expelled all the energy from your body. You don't have any powers for the next 24 hours, minimum. So Clark goes into Ulysses' cell because somehow a reporter manages to get in there. And he basically is just like, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Sorry for everything. He's like, I never want to talk to you again, man. Don't ever come to me. And Clark's like, fair enough. And so he leaves. But in his stead, he brings in Ulysses' parents. And they're like, hey, Superman convinced the warden to let us talk to you. You did some messed up stuff, son, but whatever it was that drove you to that, like, we're still here. We'll love you no matter what. We love you unconditionally. And he starts crying a little bit, puts his hand on the glass. Jimmy, sometime later, is showing Perry a blurry photo he took, and Perry's like, God, all right, fine, whatever, run it. He goes over to Clark, who wrote an article about Ulysses, and he's like, man, great article, front page stuff. I'm glad you're back here at the Daily Planet. And he's like, yeah, you called it the menace of Ulysses. I called it the tragic story of. And he's like, yeah, well, that doesn't sell papers. Get to it, kid. So Jimmy comes up to Clark, and he's like, hey, let me go buy some hot dogs real quick. And they just have a nice little talk saying like, hey, you know, that whole Ulysses utopia thing, it got me thinking. My parents, the story arc that started way before this, left me a bunch of money because they are being persecuted for like financial crimes, and I'm just supposed to sit on it. But all those people who were suffering, who like need help or whatnot, I felt I should do something for them. So I spent every cent of my parents' money, screw them, and I'm giving it away to people who need it. And the hot dogs that I'm buying you for lunch, that's going to be the last of my money. And Clark's just like, that's awesome, Jimmy. That's amazing. You did a truly great thing there. And he's like, it's nothing. It's nothing like Superman wouldn't do. And Clark's like, you know, Jimmy, I have my own little thing I want to talk about too. And everything that Ulysses taught me is that I need someone to talk to. That's important. Someone I trust. And he, as Jimmy's taking a swig of water or something, he turns into his Superman outfit and he says, "I'm Superman, Jim." So that's a thing. And then the final little bit here is we get the green cloaked figure out in shadows, Mr. Oz. He sees the fight between him and Ulysses and all that and how Ulysses lost. And he says, "Oh, Clark, I'm so proud," as he holds up some sort of package that says, "To the attention of Clark Kent at the Daily Planet." So what is he sending Clark? Why is he proud of this? So big issue, big things happening. It's not really that understandable why Geoff Johns can't keep a schedule, but I can understand why this one would require a little bit more time. Solar flare power. I like it from a conceptual standpoint that Superman can do this. Like, he can... a lot of his powers are about expelling energy in big bursts. I think this is a natural extension of that. I'm okay with the power. The caveat that he is essentially powerless for the next 24 hours kind of feels a little hand-wavy. It kind of feels just a little bit like, well, you expelled all your energy, so you don't have anything. But, like, it's just a balancing thing. It's like a video game where it's like, look, we gave you a big finisher move, but you have, like, 5 seconds of lag at the end or anyone can beat you up, so you better not miss. Like, that sort of thing. That's fine. I think the revealing the identity to Jimmy, that's also fine. I like having Jimmy know that. It's an okay issue by all means, but it is definitely front-loaded with that fight, and then the back half just feels like not a slog, but just a slow thing of like, all right, well, little housekeeping, let you know what you just saw, setting up some other future things we're doing, and then the end. So I think I would have paced out that fight a little more, or maybe somehow, I don't know, gotten like the reveal to Jimmy or something, somewhere in the middle. I don't know how I would change it. Ultimately, it's a book of two halves, and I think the front half is just so much faster of a read than the back half, especially the pages with Jimmy. That stuff is speech bubble hell. So all in all, I think I'm going to give this one a... I'll say 7.5. It'd probably get the 8, but there are a few very shaky Romita art pages, like very shaky. So down at least a half point for that. So 7.5. Action Comics number 39, written by Greg Pak, art by Aaron Kuder and Scott Kolins. So last issue, we got to meet the Eldritch Beast that has taken over Lana and was trying to convince Superman and Steel of like, terror sometimes is okay. Like, stare into the unending void. It's kind of cool. This issue picks up with pretty much everyone in Smallville, at least the kids and such, have been taken over by these horrific tentacle beasts who are like, oh, everything's happening already? You can't stop it, Superman. It's whatever. And the monster's like, I'm making them feel good. You want to feel good too, don't you, Clark? Come on, look at the kids. They're happy. And we see the older people, the people who have mental powers, are basically trapping Superman and Steel, making it so that they can't be taken over. They're being attacked, and just like, oh, shut up, Superman. We've almost sealed away the beast. But it's like, yeah, but Lana's inside the beast. And it's like, whatever. We're gonna give up on her. And he's like, I don't give up. So at that point, he says, look, it's not your choice, Superman. We're doing this. And then Hero, who somehow still has not been taken over, matches the frequency of the brain wave. Who cares? He stops the people from stopping Superman and Steel. So they zoom up into the portal. Turns out it's going into the Phantom Zone. It's some place in the Phantom Zone that Superman doesn't recognize, and he's like, it's a whole new part of the zone, and there's like all of these soul suckers in here that feed on horror. They're gonna give up our worst terrors. We got to figure out a way to deal with that. And Steel's like, okay, look, my organic steel, that's like my armor, it can get into my body and limit my heart rate and endocrine system, which will make me not be scared, but it will also make it so like my passion and love for Lana might not be as strong, and I don't want that. And he's like, I get it, but you're not going to forget how much you love her. So he does it, and he is no longer scared the beasts aren't feeding on him and just be like, all right, cool. And then Steel looks over at Superman and he's just being all over by tentacle monsters. So Steel extends his hand, sends some of the organic steel over to him, and it does the same for Superman. And he's like, okay, all right, I'm calm, I'm reasonable, but the downside is, being reasonable, I can think through how bad our odds are that this is going to work, and they are not good. So they start making their way through like various caves and stuff like that. And it's like, look, we don't see Lana around here, but that's good. Like, you know, she's not dead because like all these other dead people in here. And as they're making their way through, we see Lana is still in the throes of the beast. And it's like, hello, boys. Don't hold back. You're nearly there. And so Steel's trying to find a way to detach. But the beast is like, hey, I can't get to Steel. He's actually calm. But you, Superman, your emotions are super too. Yeah, all that terror's just fighting to get out right underneath the surface. And Superman asks, who the hell are you? And he's like, oh, you don't remember? And we cut back to that fire that Kid Clark was fighting against all those years ago, 20 years ago. And we see that it was caused by a drifter who was just trying to like roast some chicken out in the woods, when all of a sudden this creature came out through a little crack in the Phantom Zone, and he pushed his way out. And he doesn't remember his original name, doesn't remember what else, but he does remember that he was called by the people who imprisoned him the Ultra Humanite. So that's who we're dealing with, Ultra Humanite. And then he saw little baby Clark punching into the fires, and he's like, ah, man, I felt your terror. I could feed on this world forever. But then you were like really strong, even for a kid. So I just bailed. I went back through my crack and it got sealed up, and I was stuck back in the Phantom Zone for 20 years. Until Doomsday showed up and was like, breaking out of the Phantom Zone, and allowed me out as well, so I could try again. And so we see all of these horrific creatures coming back in the real world, and the older people are like, look, Superman, they're coming back to kill us. You have to incinerate their queen. It's the only option. And Ultra Human's like, oh, don't listen, Clark. And Lana manages to break through. Just be like, no, you got to incinerate me. Look, I can feel it. We're already in phase 3 of this. I am dead already. My soul has left my body. You need to kill me. And Superman's like, no, Lana, I can't do that. And it's like, look, no, we're all mortal. You're going to lose us all eventually. This is just what's going to happen. And Superman's like, man, these are lies, right? Right? Please tell me these are lies. And so he's like, look, I don't see any other way. For our worst fears, they have a grain of truth. And so he rips off Steel's organic armor, and all of that terror is now right up at the surface. And we see he just starts going through his worst fears. He's standing at the graves of his parents, and he's like, when my parents died, Lana, you let me crash your place for a week, and your parents were like super kind as I just didn't say a word on the couch. And then one day we're watching TV, and I laugh at a fart joke. And like, I hated that I laughed at a fart joke, but ultimately it made me think that things were going to be better eventually. But then a lot of bad things kept happening. Super Doom, Brainiac, all that stuff. Your parents died. Like, oh God, I kept on messing up over and over again. And so as he gives into his fears more about like the people around him, Lois being killed by Metallo, Batman and I think it's Steel? No, it's Hero being killed by Lex Luthor, Wonder Woman being turned to stone by Zod, and then literally the entire world just exploding as he's just out in space watching it happen. He's like, this is going to happen. Like, I'm going to lose everybody one day. That's my fear. Everything that I've ever fought for is just gone. And we see in the real world, Lana has been given up by the creature because Superman's terror is just that much more existential. It tastes that much better. So he's now basically a sandwich for this creature as it's being eaten, but he's like, but I'm not giving up yet. Despite that terror, I'm looking right into the void, and I'm letting it see all of my horror. And we see that it works. It's not very visually clear what happens, but it lets out a loud scream noise, and then all of the creatures that were attacking the people in Smallville, they all go back through the portal. The old people seal up the portal, but they're like, wait, what about Superman? It's like, don't worry about Superman. He'll figure a way out. And yeah, as far as I could tell, he manages to actually get back through the portal like right before it closes. But he brings along like a bunch of those creatures with him. And they all seemingly just flop to the ground lifeless, or at least Superman says they're full. Like, they've gone into a food coma. They've been filled up. And Steel's like, hey, man, that was a lot. Are you cool? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. So They close up the portal. Smallville is now allowed to return to its normal self, and everyone's just happy that's happening. I don't know what the hell they do with the things that were crawling around. Doesn't really come up. But the next we get is, because the Kents were dug up along with the Langs for Ultra Humanite stuff, Lana and Superman are reburying them. And Lana's like, hey, look, I owe you an apology. I was wrong. When we were both connected to Ultra Humanite, I saw your grief. You feel so strongly for the loss of my parents, and not just that, every person that was lost on Earth. I didn't have the right to say, like, you know, how separate you are. You're in this. And he's like, okay, yeah, but, you know, I'm just happy that we didn't lose anyone else, you know, today. That's all I'm happy about. So a bunch of the creatures have been separated from Ultra Humanite in terms of, like, they look like normal animals, and Hero's just like, yeah, cool, we're gonna take them and put them, I don't know, probably in the Fortress of Solitude. And as they're flying away, he's just like, yeah, well, that darkness in my mind, it'll always be there, but I'm just gonna let it slide off, and I'm gonna focus on the positives, because I'll always be there. And that's the bit. All right. I like it. My issue, and this is such a niche issue just because of the way it is, Ultra Humanite, correct me if I'm wrong, is a giant gorilla, right? Like, I'm talking about the DC animated universe, which is my first exposure to this stuff. He's a giant gorilla, not an eldritch horror. Like, I'm not saying it's not a fine reinvention, so be it. You want to make this eldritch horror thing, okay, but, like, I didn't see it coming, and it seems so weird to call this thing the Ultra Humanite. Like, I don't know. It just caught me off guard. Everything else in the story, it's fine. I like the way that, you know, they're talking about basically grief is the way there's grief and the terror that, like, everything is going to end one day, and just how do you deal with the existential dread, especially if you are a creature that it will end around you and not for you itself. You just have to deal with a constant stream of endings. It's some high concept crap, but I think they do an okay job. The only thing I would change is Hero. I don't think he was necessary for this plot. He just kind of is around for no reason. So I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7. It's all right. It's fine. I think it works. That's the most I can really say about it. Is it works. It just didn't blow me away in terms of a plot. It's more of a concept piece than a action comics sort of thing, you know? So 7. Green Lantern number 39, written by Robert Venditti, art by Billy Tan. So last issue is kind of just an incidental thing where Hal was put on leave, and then he went down to Earth, and he talked to Carol for the first time since her breakup. This one is set in Sector 3276, and we see an asteroid field outside of this planet where a little alien kid is running around chasing alien butterflies, and as a very small asteroid comes down, hits the planet right next to this kid, all of a sudden everything starts turning to stone around it. The kid is frozen solid. The parent who comes up to try to save the kid is frozen solid. It immediately sweeps over the entirety of their planet. And we see that it is affecting people on Earth who are connected to, like, the life web, whatever you want to call it. So Constantine's doing a spell, and he's like, what the hell is that? Raven from the Teen Titans is freaking out psychically. Shazam's like, huh? What's happening? Something's going on. And we see the planet in almost no time at all is completely just turned to stone. So the Guardians are looking at a projection of it, and they're like, okay, this is awful. This is just like, this is the worst. How are we going to deal with this? What do we do? And it's like, cool, we're going to send the leader of the Green Lantern Corps. And so it cuts over to a different sector where Hal's getting a call. And he's like, decline, I'm in the middle of something. And we see that there is a different, totally separate asteroid field where a mining rig has seemingly been trapped and or was stolen by some people. And he's like, hey, I'm a Green Lantern. I'm here to save you. Like, stop moving around so much. And they're like, ah, crap, it's a Green Lantern. We got to get out of here. So he's telling them to get ready for evacuation, but they just sit around. They don't do anything else at all. And as they keep on hitting more and more asteroids, their ship is getting more and more damage until finally it's about to explode. Hal manages to tell his ring to extract all 5 of the people inside, keeps them all safe inside bubbles, and then maneuvers them through the asteroid field. And he's like, all right, there you go. I brought you out. One of them's throwing up because it was just that hectic of a thing. And he's like, cool, awesome. Now you're all going to jail. And we see other space cops, like from a local nearby planet, show up, and they say, hey, Green Lantern, that's close enough. And it's like, hey, guys, look, if you want this to be a local thing, that's fine. These guys were clearly going to be taking this mining stuff and selling it to bomb makers. That's why the ship blew up so bad, because they have an explosive yield. If you guys want to process it for you guys, I'm all for that. And they're just like, yeah, hey, thanks for that, but here's the deal. Don't come near our planet. Anywhere that the Green Lanterns go, trouble follows. And you are in our airspace, so please just go away. And Hal's like, all right, I could take a hint. So we cut back over to Mogo. It's the mess hall, and we see 2 of the lanterns, Muck, I believe was his name, and some other one that I don't think gets a name. They're basically just having a pissing match over who has the sector that hates them the most. So, like, Muck's like, hey, I heard that you guys got chased from, it's Vath. There it is. It's like, I heard you guys got chased from one of your planets. Are there any worlds on your sector that, like you at all? And he's like, oh, yeah, you're one to talk. You smell like fish. And he's like, take that back. So Kilowog steps in. He tells him to separate. And then goes to see Hal, who is inside the command center, just sitting and, like, looking at like different screens and stuff like that, particularly of a bunch of the Earth Lanterns. And he's like, what are you doing sitting at a desk, Jordan? And he's just like, well, I got a call from the Guardians. We're going to have a meeting, and that's always good news. So he then asks Kilowog, like, hey, man, while we were out and about doing stuff, why didn't you tell me that, like, everyone hates the Green Lanterns now? And it's like, well, you know, we've been through a lot, mainly that whole Durlin thing, the uprising where they made it seem like you were going to be fascist. Yeah, no, the whole thing hates us. And, like, all the Lanterns are feeling it, too, because morale is at an all-time low. It seems like nobody wants us to be around. Like, we need a fresh start. Like, there are still some people who hate us for the Manhunters. That wasn't even in the New 52. I don't even know if that happened. But they hate us for it. And Kilowog makes the point of saying, I kind of want the old Guardians back. And House was like, whoa, like, are you serious? And it's like, no, but not like in charge. Like, I didn't want them to die. They should have gone through a trial and served a sentence. Then we would have had, like, someone to blame, someone for the universe to point to and say, those were the people that caused the problem. Now the problem's solved, you know? So Hal's called to his meeting with the new Guardians, and they see that another planet's already been taken by this thing. And Hal's like, all right, I'm here, get on with it. And they're like, did we piss you off somehow? And he's like, nah, but I know the deal. The last time I showed up here, you told me to take an involuntary leave. And then before that, I was kicked out of the Corps and replaced with Sinestro. And it's like, okay, well, that one wasn't us. And the involuntary leave thing, like we explained to you, that's just, you know, you needed a vacation. We're just sending you out. Look, here's the thing. We like you, Hal. You're doing a good job. Like, you did a great job. Yeah, you had a lot of stuff put on your plate, but for the most part, you kept the Corps together, and that's what we wanted you to do, and you were successful. So, as much as we may not like your renegade style, you did it, and we're grateful for that. But here's the thing. I don't know if you've noticed, people don't like the Green Lanterns right now. And he's like, yeah, I've heard. And he's like, right. So, here's the thing. You must be the instrument of change. When people think Green Lantern, they think you. You are the greatest Lantern of all. That's been said before. So if we are going to try to clear the Corps' name, we need you to help us out here. Can you do that? And we don't get the response, but we do get Hal down in the locker room later on. And as he puts his ring away inside of the locker, and he's like, he pulls out his old bomber jacket, and he's like, man, you and I have been through so many bad things, and, like, I wish that I could talk to my dad again just to tell me what the right thing to do is, but I realize that, you know, when you get further away from the cockpit, you've only ever got 2 choices. You can go down in flames or do something crazy. And we see he hangs up the bomber jacket as well as he walks away to do something. What is it? So, just to make things clear here, I'm about 95% sure that those asteroids that are hitting the planets are pieces of the source wall. And that's what's happening, is it's, you touch the source wall, you turn into stone. And then they all broke out during the New Gods thing. Apologies. So I think that that's what's happening here. It makes sense. It's a natural extension of like, okay, we broke people out of the wall. Now there are pieces of the wall everywhere. I like that. That's a fine enough thing. The only thing I kind of, just with this specific issue, is that, yeah, everyone hates the Green Lanterns. That's been established for the past like 3 arcs now. But it doesn't feel like things have gotten worse. Like the past, I'd say everything since the Durlin thing, which is basically just the New Gods arc, but that should have improved relations. That shouldn't have been anything where it was still a negative. I think that to have people still be like even more pissed off with them than before, I needed something to say, like, why would that be? What happened during the New God stuff that made people hate the Green Lanterns that much more? The one guy says trouble follows you wherever you go, which I guess is fine enough, but you could say that about any superhero. So, I don't know, I'm a little bit like iffy on that, but everything else, it's a perfectly fine issue setting up whatever the next arc is going to be. So yeah, I'm curious to see that, and I'll give this one, you know what, I really want to say 8, because I do really enjoy it, but I don't think it's quite there. So 7.5. Aquaman and the Others, number 10, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Medina. So last issue, the ghost of Gary, still inside a prisoner's body, pulled the triple switch once again, maybe. I mean, this issue confirms it, and shot Yawara as he goes to send the codes to the evil group up on the satellite. So he's going to do that. He's typing in the launch codes, and they're like, what about the Jungle Girl? It's just like, I shot her in the head, and even if she's not dead yet, she landed in the ocean, so she'll be dead soon. We cut over to years ago, where we see the history of this version of Vostok. As we saw earlier, he's a clone, and there were a bunch of different, like, ways the clones were raised. His was in an abusive household, because why not? And we see, his father's yelling at him, beating his mother. He tries to stand up for his mom at one point, but the father's just like, shut up, you suck, get out of my house, and he just throws him out. And later on, years down the road, he gets into a fight with some other kid. He's almost arrested by a police officer when all of a sudden the, secret police, whatever you want to call them, for the CCCP comes up and is just like, oh, we're in charge of this kid, don't worry about it, we'll take him off your hands. So they load him in a car and they say, like, we're going to make you the nation's greatest cosmonaut boy. So we cut over to Vostok as he's remembering all this, and in walks Maelstrom, one of the evil ladies, and just like, hey, I'm just going to recount everything that happened last issue to remind people that you're a clone who was put in an abusive household, and that was like a conscious choice that was made in order to try to make you a good cosmonaut. And they're like, please stop talking about it. I don't want to think about that. That makes me upset. And in walks the NKV demon, who's just like, all right, you guys got to see this. We got the codes from Gary. We're going to bomb the yacht ship that Aquaman and the others are on, and that's going to not only kill Aquaman and the others, but also show our might to the world, to let them know we got nukes hanging above their head. So, T-minus 10 minutes to launch. We see Yawara, as she is unconscious in the water, gets lifted up out by a giant water hand, and as Prisoner hops onto the helicopter on the yacht, already inside of it is the operative, who's just like, going somewhere? You must think I'm an idiot. And they start getting into a fight, and it's just like, well, I knew that you didn't. What you literally tried the same trick like 3 times in a row, man. We're not falling for it. You're clearly still Gary. And he's like, oh, I'm getting out of here, and if I gotta go over your dead body, that's all fine with me. And so he pulls out the gun again, he shoots operative, but it turns out it's blanks. And operative's like, I replaced them before you even picked up the gun. You never had any bullets to begin with. He's like, what? But I shot the Jungle Girl, Yawara. And so Mara picks up Yawara, drops her off on the boat, saying like, yeah, no, we wadded up a little like piece of paper or something inside the barrel of the gun for the blank to fire out. It was enough force to knock her unconscious, but she's alive. And he's just like, oh, all right, well, you beat me on that one, but I still have uploaded the launch codes, and I'm going to sink this boat of yours. And Operative's like, well, I guess I'm going to have to beat the crap out of you before they hit. So they get into the long thing of like, you killed me. How could you kill me? And he's like, you deserved it. You're an ass. And so they continue fighting. Yawara eventually comes to being like, hey, I'm going to go kill Gary because he's an ass. And Mara reminds her like, hey, we've got this all planned out, like strict timing. Your moment will come, but don't get involved yet. So we then see Operative manages to slam Gary into the wall, puts a knife to his throat, and then starts saying, like, I know you're in there, Dominic, and you got all those other souls inside of you as well. You guys need to take him out and get rid of Gary, okay? Drive him out. And we see, like, out of the dog tags come all the souls as they start pulling on Gary, and then he screams out no as he disappears into the ether. And then as Dominic gets up, it is actually Dominic, and he's like, yeah, guys, it's me. I'm really back. And all I can think is like, this is the fourth time we'd keep on doing this. But no, it is actually him. And he says, Gary's gone forever, and he rips off his dog tags and throws them into the ocean. And so at that point, Mara's like, all right, so where do we stand on time? And Operative's like, 10 minutes are almost up. Time for Yawara to do her thing. So up on the satellite, we see the villains counting down 3, 2, 1, and then all of a sudden alarms start going off on our computers. It's like, ah, crap, those weren't the launch codes. They were a virus. We got our entire satellite screwed, man. And Yawara teleports in and just like, hey, guys, we screwed you. We knew that it was a thing, and so we sent them the wrong codes. You guys suck. And she's about to teleport all of them out, but NKV Demon presses a button that says, well, you know what? Let's give them something to remember. And it says launch. So one of the missiles just launches out of the satellite. No target, no nothing. It's just heading down to Earth. And we see that Yawara has teleported the entire crew to some random ass island in the middle of the ocean. And that's where Aquaman shows up being like, yep, this is where we fight, where you guys can't hurt anybody. So Cheshire's like super convinced that she can beat Aquaman. Not going well. But the rest of the team shows up, they start fighting, and then NKV Demon's like, you guys might have think you won, but you guys didn't teleport us out fast enough because I pressed the launch button. There's a missile coming down to Earth right now, and it's going to blow something up. And they look at Operative and are just like, dude, you told us that you sent they're not going to be able to do that. And he's just like, I said that I was pretty sure I could disable most of the systems, but if it happens the way he's saying it did, yeah, they can just like press a button and let a missile go without any targeting. That's within their feasibility. So, yeah, there's a missile headed towards Earth now. And that's where the issue ends, because next issue is the last issue. And, of course, we have to figure out a way to divert this missile. My guess, Vostok. He seemed like he would be the kind. I mean, look, I said last issue that, like, of course it was still, like, okay. Take a breath. I hate the fact that the villains tried to pull the same exact trick of, oh no, don't worry guys, it's actually me this time, because they already did that. Like, it's just kind of pathetic at that point. I like the fact that, of course, the heroes saw right through it, but, like, from a reading perspective, the fact that we left that on a cliffhanger last issue of saying that the heroes clearly didn't fall for it, oh no, like, I don't know, it bothered me. Everything else in this issue is whatever, but it definitely feels like, okay, we're just wrapping this up now. Like, it's whatever. We gave them a computer virus, we saw right through it, and then we're just going to have one big final fight. So be it. You just need to wrap it up, but it doesn't make this issue anything special. So, all in all, I think this one's probably going to be, honestly, like a 6 for me. And I didn't even mention the recapping of Vostok's history again. And I'm not saying the flashback sequence, I'm saying Maelstrom coming up and just spending a full page saying what we already learned 2 issues ago. Like, that's unforgivable. That's something that you have to accept, that your readers will know the basics of carrying between issues. Don't devote an entire page to saying the exact same thing you said before. So 6 for this, and we'll see how the last issue ends it. Earth 2, number 31, written by Wilson, Bennett, and Johnson, art by Andy Smith and Cliff Richards. So, whatever's going on in Earth 2 World's End right now, Dr. Fate is bumming around, and he's knocking out a whole bunch of new parademons that have been made as people are being herded into an underground cavern. And all of a sudden, the helmet, Naboo, is talking to Khalid, the guy underneath the helmet, and saying, bro, like, we've had so much power that we are wasted here. Like, this is a little, like, rinky-dink operation. We could go to Apocalypse and, like, rip their asses apart. And I can't tell if it's the helmet or Khalid talking, but Hawkgirl's like, hey, are you listening? We need you down here. You need to help us out. And he's like, I could do so much more. I could do so much better. I tore apart a god without even, like, needing anything. I did famine? Nothing. And Flash is like, I'm pretty sure I needed to take off the armor for you to damage famine. But either way, Fate's just like, nope, I gotta go. And he's kind of trying to fight against it, just like, my friends, I'm trying to help. And the helmet's just like, only you can save the world. We're going to strike back at Apocalypse. Let's go. So he opens up a portal and just zooms right over to Apocalypse. We also get the other part of this, which is Atlantis. And we see there's still a zombie problem going on down there because Death showed up. And so Aquawoman raises her trident and is like, I am going to take all the zombies and I'm going to put them into like a whirlpool thing, and then they're all going to turn into shark bait. So whatever, that's dealt with. And one of her like guards, of Captain of the Guards or whatever, comes up and being like, hey, you may think that restored balance, but the problem here is that the world is going to end, and as such, Atlantis cannot stay by the sidelines anymore. And she's just like, the land people suck. They kept me kidnapped and away from my people for so long. I don't give a crap what happens to them. And he's like, all right, let me show you this real quick. And they go over a ridge, and there's just tons of wreckage of like ships and dead whales and stuff like that, all surrounding a giant asteroid that was obviously something that just came from the moon exploding. So it's like, yeah, there will be no oceans left if this is allowed to continue. So we see Fate gets into Apocalypse and just like walking around, just like, all right, so where are we going, Helmet? And the Helmet's like, oh, this is the Apocalyptian Hall of Lore. It's got some of the greatest treasures. And so they go in and they see a whole bunch of like crazy tools that outdate Darkseid himself. And it's like, okay, but who's in charge of this? And then turning around the corner is Arcanus, the keeper of the lore. And just like, Arcanus is like, hey, man, welcome, Naboo. You are welcome here. It's like, oh, my name's Khalid, you witch, and I can take you on. You don't look that strong. And then she pulls on a chain, and out comes Thrall, I believe his name is, or some other guy. I don't know. But he's subjugated, and his eyes and mouth are sewn shut, to which Naboo's like, oh, all right, you think you can take me on? The helmet's mine, Arcanus. You ain't going to get your hand on it. And Arcanus is like, bro, what are you talking about? The helmet's breaking up with you, man. And he's like, what? And then all of a sudden the helmet pops off of Khalid's head being like, yeah, no, Thrall is like super powerful and I sensed him earlier, so you were kind of just my ride here. Bye. So he hops onto Thrall's head. Thrall immediately turns into a new Dr. Fate, and he's just like, oh, I have such potential. It is done. Your service is at an end, Khalid. And then Thrall is like, and yours has just begun, Naboo. And he's like, what? No, I'm in charge of you. He's like, no, you aren't. Bro, I'm from Apocalypse. Are you kidding me? You think little rinky-dink earth magic's any source of whatever for Apocalypse? Nah, man. So he uses Naboo's powers and starts just like launching bombs and stuff around the earth. And he's like, yep, I'm going to burn your world once again. So back down in Atlantis, the queen is like, all right, look, the oceans have started evaporating, so be it. I can take the moisture out of the clouds and bring it back down here. We can do that. And she looks around and sees like all the dead whales and stuff like that, and she puts them back down into the water to allow them to rest. And just like, all right, look, when I was up there and like during the wars and all that, every time that an Atlantean like city was hit or a person died, I took it personally because I thought, that's my city. But now I'm done with taking it personally. Nobody's going to win this. It's just about survival. Let's go to war. So Atlantis has officially joined the fight on a larger scale. So we go back to Apocalypse, where Khalid's just running around trying to find a way out, and the helmet's calling out to him like, hey man, I made a mistake. Can you come pick me up? And he's like, what? No, you said my service is at an end. You totally betrayed me, dude. And then he's like, yeah, but here's the thing. If you let him keep on using me, your entire planet's going up in flames. And Khalid's like, son of a... All right, whatever. Where are you? So they go, and Thrall's still like launching attacks and whatnot. And they're like, what about Khalid? Should we kill him? And he's just like, nah, let him run around Apocalypse. He'll be eaten at some point. And then Khalid comes into the room and he's like, I'm here for my helmet. And Thrall starts getting like a headache or something like that. Like Naboo's trying to fight against him. And Arcanus is just like, bro, we're just going to kill you and that'll be the end of it. And he's like, oh, we'll see about that. And he recounts some sort of spell which causes Thrall's head to explode inside of the helmet. Or sorry, his neck to get severed, I should say, because then the helmet flies off and his head just falls out. And the helmet's like, thank you, Khalid. And he's like, yeah, okay, you remember that the next time you think you can do better. So he puts back on the helmet, becomes Dr. Fate. Fate just throws Arcanus into a wall, just says like, shut up, I don't want to hear you. And then walks back through a portal and basically just ends up exactly where he left before. But this time, the helmet's just like, oh, we must return and assist all the others like you wanted to before. And Khalid's like, yeah, good idea, bro, but here's the deal. Once all this is said and done, you are clearly too much of a danger to this planet to exist. I'm gonna bury you in a ditch. Got it? So, yeah. That's that. I think next issue is the last issue. Obviously, we still got what's going on in the World's End book, but that's the end of Earth 2 as its own separate thing there until after Convergence, and boy howdy am I looking forward to that. So, how is this issue? It's the same as every other Earth issue has been. Like, let's check in on this little side story, this little tangent that doesn't impact the plot at all, but gives you a little bit more of an insight into what's going on. Cool. Dr. Fate tried to betray everybody and then immediately got smacked down like the cheating whore he is. It's an all right issue. Dr. Fate hasn't gotten a lot in this series, which I think is a disservice because it's an interesting character, but that's just my personal thing. I don't think that this is a personally good issue. I think it is, once again, just kind of fluff to justify having this book at the same time as World's End. So 6, can't really go much higher than that. Green Arrow number 39, written by Ben Sokolowski, Andrew Kreisberg, and art by Daniel Sampere. So, last issue, we got a whole thing with Green Lantern and Katana being around. But Zera was taken by King and was starting to be tortured. And this issue basically picks up with Green Arrow trying to get in contact with her because something happened where the entire Queen Foundation has now been liquidated and shipped over to John King's Kingdom Housing Project. So, wouldn't you know it, Oliver Queen's lost all of his money again. So everything's awful. And as he storms into the building, we see that he's angry, looking for Zera. But before anything else can be done, Felicity says, hey, I traced the IP address of who did the transfer. And then she's whisked away by federal agents who say, you're under arrest for hacking everybody. That's absolutely a thing. So she gets brought off to prison, and Oliver's like, hey, I'll do something, hold on. But then as Diggle picks up the tablet of who did the hacking, turns out it was Zehra herself. So Oliver goes up to Zehra's office and says, like, oh, he turned you. You work for King now, don't you? And she pulls out a little Bluetooth headset and just like, yeah, he wants to talk to you. So they talk on the Bluetooth, and he's like, oh, I'm happy you survived that Zeppelin fall. It's going to be so much better to take everything away from you, little bit by bit, tiny little stuff. And he's just like, what did you do to Zehra? And just like, oh, I'm just convinced her to be on my side of things. No big deal. And regardless, you should be more focused on yourself right now. And he's like, oh, but you tipped off the police about Felicity. It's like, I mean, yes, but she also did definitely commit all those crimes. I really want you to understand she was a criminal before she met you. That was a thing. So we see King recounts the first time He was getting held up in Seattle, and then Green Arrow saved him by shooting the mugger, but he missed on purpose any like major arteries or whatever. So King's like, that's how I knew that I should take over this city and make it something where I'm not going to let you, a coward, be its guardian. So he hangs up, and Oliver turns to Zebra, like, how could you do this to me? And they keep flashing back little panels of them falling in love, and Zebra's like, I came up from nothing, and I always bet on the winner, and King is obviously the winner here, so he has an army. What do you hope to do about that? And Oliver's like, in case it wasn't clear, we're breaking up. And you could just hear a little air horn sound in the background. So Felicity gets her mugshot taken, and we see her. She literally just cannot shut up. Like, even in character, she's like, oh, you know, I'm partially terrified, but I also wanted to be processed. It's part of my bucket list. And then she gets into like a jumpsuit, and she's like, isn't orange supposed to be the new black? And one of the guards is just like, we've got a lot of psychos here. You're just weird. So we see she's being led down some halls, and she's commenting on how advanced it looks for a prison. And he's like, no, you're not in just a prison. You're in a supermax. And she's like, oh, God, this is way more than I should be in. And she's led over to her cell, and she meets her roommate, which I don't think supermax prisons allow for roommates. But it turns out it's Cheetah, who says, hey, it's been a long time. Welcome to the jungle. And she's clearly angry. And Felicity's like, no, please, get me another roommate. So Oliver goes to one of his parents' graves, I guess his mom, and is like, oh, man, I wish they could tell me what to do right now, because I'm lost. I have no idea what to do. And Diggle's like, that's what you get for being a hero. It's just the sacrifice stuff. And, you know, it's the basic back and forth. Like, I failed this city. It's like, you could still do something for this city. So Oliver basically says, okay, if I want to do something for the city, I got to help out Felicity first. And Diggle makes a point, like, she did commit those crimes. Like, that is actually a thing she did. And he's like, nah, screw it. We're just going to save her anyway. So we see inside of the prison, she's not immediately killed. She makes it to lunchtime at least. And Cheetah's basically like, oh, it's not the food here that's going to kill you. It's me. When lights go out, I'm going to kill you. And apparently what happened was Felicity was hired for a gig where she basically doxed all of the supervillains and gave out their, like, loved ones' names and addresses. Like, Cheetah took that personally, of like, we may be villains, but we're still people, and that's just mean. And she's like, it was a job, I'm sorry, I hope you know it wasn't personal. So she says, as soon as the lights go out, like, I'm taking care of you. So we go to the Supermax prison, and we see Steve Trevor is head of Argus, driving the car into the Supermax. He flashes credentials, and as they get into the back area, Green Arrow's let out of the back of the car, and he's like, look, because of your history and all this doing stuff, like, I'm giving you 3 minutes. The cameras will be disabled as a routine nightly update. You get in, you get out, you take her with, then, like, that's it. You get caught, I'm not here. And Arrow's like, perfect. It won't take me even 2 minutes. So we then see, you know, it's nighttime. Cheetah's about to kill Felicity inside their cell. She's doing everything she can. She's like, I know card games. And she's like, I like solitaire. So Oliver gets in. He starts beating guards. He's making his way deep into the Supermax prison. And as Cheetah has her hands wrapped around Felicity's throat, Oliver breaks into the cell and wraps a arrow with a cord around her, so she stops. Mind you, she is super powered with super strength. I don't feel like that should work, but regardless, Felicity's like, oh, you came for me. And he's like, yeah, of course, we got to get you out of this place. And she's like, no, you don't understand. Nobody's ever come back for me. And so she gives him a little kiss as they run out of the building just before the cameras come back online and get out of there. Then we go to, I can't remember if her name is Mia or Thea in this one, but regardless, the king's daughter who doesn't like him, and he's like, look, I'm building these houses for homeless people because I think people, you know, I'll give them food and jobs and stuff, and then they'll love me and they'll work for me. And she's like, that's literally, you're just talking about being a slumlord, Dad. That's not better. You're awful. And you also tried killing people at that hospital. Don't think I forgot that. And he's like, well, yeah, they're sick and injured, and the sick and injured have no place in my new society. They're a drag on us all. And so she pauses and says, well, what does that mean for me? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, I'm sick too, Dad. We'll get to that probably next month. So we see Oliver and crew making their way down the streets, and saying like, okay, what do we do? The entire city is on King's side. How can we take him down? It's us versus everyone. And they say, not necessarily. And we see that Diggle and Felicity have called a few friends to help out against this army. And we see Arsenal, Emiko, Katana, Batman, Lex Luthor, I believe it's Naomi from the last arc, and then some redhead that I definitely don't recognize. I feel like Batman and Katana would have been enough. Everyone else is just there for fluff. Yeah. It's fine. It's okay. I really dislike the Felicity in jail thing because that was absolutely just completely unnecessary to this plot. Like, it was created, dealt with, and forgotten about all over the course of this one issue. None of it matters. The only thing it does is say, oh wow, Felicity likes Oliver even a little more now, which I didn't need more of. I already got that. You convinced me of that already. So yeah, it's not a great one. Look, I don't know what I want from this art. Like, it's not like anything here has really been working for me. Even the King stuff has just kind of been like, okay, there's someone who's the evil version of Oliver Queen who's doing bad things with money. I feel like I've seen that before. So yeah, I'm just ready for this to be done. And I think it's going to be done next issue. I think we get into, I think it's actually, oh God, who picks up after him? Williamson? I don't know. Whoever it is, I'm looking forward to that a lot more. This TV tie-in stuff just needs to die. So I'm going to give this one a 5.5. I wasn't happy reading it. I was so bored. So yeah, 5.5 for this. Lobo number 5, written by Cullen Bunn, art by Alisson, Borges, Cliff Richards, and Nelson DeCastro. So last issue, I believe, was the Superman tie-in issue where Superman basically said, like, get off my planet, I don't like you here. This issue has nothing to do with that. It's just continuing the plot of Lobo taking out the people who would destroy the Earth. And we meet up with a demon sorcerer lady who calls herself Zariel Thane, and she tries to summon a demon to commit murder on her behalf. And as this hand reaches out from the summoning circle, out comes Lobo, and he's like, wait a minute, who are you? And it's like, oh, what, you thought a demon was going to come out? Yeah, no, I'm here for violence. That's what I'm here for. And she's like, what? My spells have never failed. And he's like, bro, you weren't casting spells. We looked into your stuff. You were using technology to open up portals to other dimensions. So we hijacked it, and now I'm here. So at that point, she's like, oh, you're not going to kill me, are you? And he's like, I mean, you're on the list. So he shoots her in the head and then just walks out. And we see Emily is on the comms with him being like, that was extraordinarily cold even for you. And she's like, hey, look, she's on the list. I can't do anything about it. She has to die. Speaking of which, what do we got on our next mark? And Emily describes that this guy's the businessman, and Lobo recognizes the name, that he's known all across like the universe. He has any place that can make a bit of money in any way whatsoever, he's got his hands in, including here on Earth, whether it's legal or illegal. And Emily chimes in and be like, well, not Earth anymore, because he's liquidating all of his assets and bailing. So we see one of the buildings that was affected by this was just hit by mass layoffs. People are stealing office supplies, tearing up papers. We see one couple is consummating their office romance, and as they are about to do the deed, Lobo steps up being like, hi, so sorry, where can I find your boss? And they're like, 23rd floor. And Lobo's like, all right, thank you. By the way, looking at the girl, you could do so much better than him. So he hops into the 23rd or the elevator, heads up to the 23rd floor, and he's basically like, man, I can't, their planet is literally like seconds from dying at any given point here, and they're like making out. That is crazy to me, but you know what, maybe that's the way you got to deal with it. And as he comes out on the 23rd floor, there's already a bloodbath. Everyone is already dead. And we run into this woman bounty hunter who seems to recognize Lobo and be like, oh, I've heard about you. And now it seems we finally come face to face. But, you know, I never thought I would see a Zarnian in the flesh again. So then we get the flashback of Lobo and his planet dying. And the princess is like, all these people, all these Zarnians are bailing off the planet and going to the nearby planet of, what was it called? It's like Zrexel or something like that. He's like, look, your planet, the planet is tied to the health of your father. And he ain't doing hot. So therefore, the planet's not doing hot. If we want to do something, then we need to do something about your father. And she's like, this is treason. I can't hear this. I'm out of here. And she just runs away. And as she goes to do so, all these people who were loaded up inside of this giant-ass spaceship to go take off to Zrexia, some soldiers come up and it's just like, well, under orders of the Emperor, nobody can leave. Poom! Fires a rocket launcher and all the people inside die. So we cut back over to the fight, and it turns out that this blue lady is a Zrexian. And it's like, oh, you're the last of your kind. And she's like, yeah, and so are you. And he's like, I reckon you're the pariah. I thought you were a myth. And he's like, oh, I mean, I'm a legend, but not a myth. So at that point, Emily's like, who is this bitch? Why do you know her? What's going on? And Lobo switches off the comms and just like, yeah, that's right. We should get a little bit of silence as we get to know each other. So you want to do this or not? And so at that point, Lobo starts throwing punches. She starts throwing kicks. And it seems like she's saying, like, look, don't make me kill you before we get the chance to ... And Lobo's like, oh, better than you have tried. So they continue to just keep on fighting. And the Zrexian lady, who's called Pariah, is like, if I didn't know any better, I'd say you're flirting with me. So they say, she makes the point of saying, like, look, your heart's not in this, but certain other body parts might be. So, you know, it's genetic, it's natural. Between the two of us, because they're very close in species, because these planets are very similar, like they were right next to each other, and we get a bit more details later, they could both kickstart their species again by mating. And Lobo's like, yeah, screw that. I don't know if you heard, but I destroyed Zarnia. And Pariah, she's got stabbed a few times, so she's crawling away, just being like, oh, you're still sticking to that story? You still believe that? And he's like, what? What are you talking about? So she fires back a laser beam, and like full blast just goes through the middle of Lobo. And he's left having to regenerate for a while. And she's like, look, I need you to regenerate a bit so we can be in tip-top shape the next time I see you, because that one's going to be fun. So she walks off. As Lobo finally manages to get up to his feet, he's just like, yeah, she's kind of a bitch. But she explains that Zrexia is Zarnia's sister planet, and when people started wanting to bail off the main Zarnia, when everything started going to hell, they went over to Zrexia, but then when Zarnia died, it took Zrexia with it. But there's been this old myth that the Lobo would end up mating with the Pariah and save back their races from total extinction. And he's like, I don't believe in religion, but I do believe in my code. And my code says she's going to die. So he puts back on the comms, and Emily's like, don't ever take me off of comms again. We thought you died. And he's like, yeah, no, I didn't. Anyway, what do you know about the businessman? How's he trying to kill the world? And she's like, oh, there's something about satellite arrays, something in deep space, something about the Demiurge Armada. And Lobo's like, yeah, that's also just a crazy myth. Something about an old fleet of ships that were abandoned and are just drifting out in space, but they have enough firepower between them that if you got the codes to control them, that you could level an entire solar system. I don't think that's true, but you know, it's possible. So at that point, Lobo busts into the next room, and he sees the businessman there. It seems like he's already lost his leg, but he's left alive, whereas everyone else is dead around him. And as Lobo comes up, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm here to kill you. And he's like, oh, but she said she was leaving me for you, sparing me. And he's basically begging for his life, saying like, oh, she's going to call the Demiurge down on all of us, but she said that you take care of me. And Lobo's like, she knows that he's my target, and she didn't kill him. That's part of my code. She's playing by my rules. Okay, all right, you know what? Maybe I'm okay with this one here. And as the businessman is like trying to beg a little bit. He's just like, oh, she wanted you to know that Earth wouldn't be the first planet she killed. She said that the planet that you thought you were responsible for, she was actually responsible for. And so Lobo punches this guy's nose into his skull and just like, is she saying that she killed Zarnia? This bitch took my kill. So, yeah, broke the code again. That was fast. I get that this entire character is supposed to be the modern reinterpretation, whereas 90s Extreme went out of fad. This one is just edge and like sex appeal and stuff like that. So giving him a character who is his equal in like the feminine form of that, I get the point. I understand where this tasteful pastiche is coming from. I'm not sure if I like it yet, but it is at least staying interesting for me. I think this book did a much greater service than the past few because it took all the human characters, that little crew he assembled, and just put them on comms. We don't have to see them. We don't have to deal with them. They're not in the fight, but they are still allowing Lobo to talk to somebody. That's all I needed. This is actually one of the better issues over the past like couple. So I'm going to say this one is probably still a 7. It's almost a 7.5, but I just can't give it to it. I'm hoping that this character actually turns out to be something interesting and like we can develop this a bit more, because I'm up for Lobo having someone that is actually a bit of a challenge and is a recurring threat to him rather than just I kill them and they're dead. So 7.5. No, 7. Not 7.5. 7. Swamp Thing number 39, written by Charles Soule, art by Jesús Saíz. So last issue we had a lot of stuff. The gray Avatar and Anton Arcane got into the green. Anton got control of the rod again and then started poisoning the green from the inside. And then the reanimated body of Alec Holland by the machines is fighting against Swamp Thing because that's crazy enough. So we open up this issue with Swamp Thing basically falling to his knees because the rot is taking over. He's starting to lose all of his power. And the Alec Holland body is like, I didn't do nothing to you, man. I don't know what's going on. So the Machine Queen comes back in and is like, hi, I'm the one who did it. And Alec's like, hello, mama. And it's like, why? Who are you? And she's like, oh, you still don't recognize it. Okay, how about this? And so she transforms her face slightly to resemble Lady Weeds more. And Swamp Thing's like, oh my god, Lady Weeds. And it's like, yeah, you got your Lady Capuchin. She broke my neck, but she doesn't kill me. And might I just say, I would have preferred to be dead than paralyzed like that, just so you're aware. So she goes over and it's like, oh, I need my little baby Alec Holland here to grow up big and strong, which means you need to eat your vegetables. And he's like, oh, but he smells bad. And it's like, well, do what you say. Don't disobey me. So Alec Holland comes over, plunges his hands into Swamp Thing's stomach, and starts eating out this rotten greenery from inside of his chest cavity. And he's like, good, have some more. And we eventually just see the husk of Swamp Thing just laying on the ground, his entire chest cavity eaten out. Alec Holland's stomach is distended, saying like, I don't feel so good. And Lady Weeds is like, yes, that'll do nicely. Anyway, Swamp Thing, you're going to continue to feel all of this right up until the rot reaches your brain. But just want you to know, all of this is your fault. And so she breaks his hand and then flies away. As she's flying away, Swamp Thing gets up and tries to crawl his way over to the bayou where the grove is, the entrance to the green. And he sees the Serene guy, Guarov, is completely out of it, taken control of. The grove has been poisoned, and he's like, oh no. And he kind of just passes out. So then we go up to Service in the Arctic, where the machines are based, and we see that as Machine Queen arrives, he's like, all right, well, I don't really know what to do with you, new Alec. You're kind of done with when it comes to my plan, but maybe I can keep you around for a bit. But out come the algorithms, and they're like, the main one, Algorithm Omega, is like, what in the hell is that thing? Pointing to Alec. And he just throws up all over the ground, just like, I fruit up, Mom. And he's just like, that thing is not mechanical. It is something else, and we don't like it. And she's like, that thing is the creature that bested the Avatar of the Green, and he is glorious. And he's like, look, Omega is like, look, that's not a machine, and our goal was to unify all of the kingdoms under us, and we would be able to do that, including plants. But you have poisoned the green. How is that in our goal? And she's like, the green doesn't matter. The future is metal. That's all that matters here. So we can get rid of plants. Plants aren't necessary. And Omega's just like, all right, we're clearly on different wavelengths here. We're in conflict. This is not going to work out. And you see a algorithm is just like, Omega, maybe just shut up. And Machine Queen is like, oh, you think so? Do you think that's what's going on? So we cut over to Abigail coming and seeing that the house is on fire. And she's like, oh, man, I like this house. And then the grove is completely poisoned. Gaurav is, taken over by the fungus. And Swamp Thing calls over from the bushes to the side, being like, oh, he can't hear you. You got to come here, Abby. And she's like, what is going on? I'm having trouble accessing the rot. This is like, what is happening here? And she sees Swamp Thing just being like, hey, Abby, I need some help. And it's like, what? What happened to you? It's like, Anton, he's in the green. He poisoned the green. Everything sucks, but you got to look at the bright side. And she's like, what possible bright side is there? It's like, well, I'm rotting, which means you can touch me now. She's like, God, yeah, great, cool, awesome. Anyway, so she tries reaching into the rot. She's unable to. The Parliament's not talking to her. And she's like, what happened? It's like, Anton, he made it back in. I don't know how. We got to go get some help. Cut to Constantine in a bar, getting the crap kicked out of him. And as the bartender's like, oh, stay down there unless you want another. He's like, you mean another drink? I'll take two. And so the bartender helps him up to his feet and just like, God, you're a bastard, Constantine. So as he gets up to the bar, Constantine downs a swig. The bartender all of a sudden freaks out at something in the door. And as Constantine turns around, he sees Swamp Thing and Abigail and just like, yeah, all right, that's worth freaking out about. So we cut back over to service, and Omega is like, your termination is not required. We don't want to kill you. Just give us back our powers and you're free to go on your way. And Machine is like, oh my God, you're serious? You're just asking? Jesus Christ, you guys are children. Okay, let me tell you a story of something I learned. Meanwhile, the A algorithm is just bailing. He's just sprinting as fast as he can away. And she's like, look, when I was teaching Alec Holland, Swamp Thing, how to be Swamp Thing, I taught him everything he knows. I taught him a whole lot of stuff, but he taught me something too. He taught me, because, sometimes you get so lost in the weeds, you don't really see other options there. But he taught me that if you don't like what's happening to the people in charge, if the Parliament tries to take your powers away, you can just take theirs away. And she zaps all the machines and just destroys them. Omega, Beta, Gamma, all dead. So out comes the A calculus, not algorithm. A calculus he's just running through the snow, and Machine Queen lands in front, and it's just like, all right, where do you think you're going? And he's like, please don't disassemble me. I'm a real boy. And she's like, no, you're not. I'm going to take you out now. And he's like, wait, hold on. I can be loyal. I'm good at being loyal. I can do that. And she's like, something else that Alec taught me is that if your plan relies on trust, it's a bad plan. And so she shoots him in the head with like a made-up gun, because she's just using her machine controlling powers, and now he's out of the picture too. So back at the bar, bartender's like, okay, I got a shotgun trained on these things. I'm going to try to shoot them. And Constantine's like, these things are responsible for a lot of life stuff, so if they're showing up here, you don't want to get on their bad side. How about you pour us some drinks instead? And he's like, all right, Constantine, I'll do that. So Constantine learns about Abigail, just like, and who the hell are you? It's like Abby Arcane. And he's like, that last name is kind of a bad last name. And she's like, yeah, don't want to talk about it. So Constantine calls him out saying, like, I take it the machines thing isn't going well. And he's like, yeah, everything is poisoned. I need your help. And Constantine's like, bro, if the world's going to end and we're going to have robots in a few days, I'm not going to waste my time moving towards the robots. Why should I help you? Why do you think you can tell me what I can do in my last few days? And he's like, I'm not. I'm asking you to help me, and I'd like you to stay my friend. And he's like, all right, fair enough. So he pulls out a beer, and Abby calls him out, just like, are you serious? You're still going to try to drink? And he's like, shut up. And he casts some sort of spell that turns it green, and he's like, well, bottoms up. So whatever it does, it gives Swamp Thing just a little bit of his power back. They make it back to the Grove, and he's like, look, I'm not connected to the green, but it just gave me a little bit of energy. This is about all I can do. Here's what I need you to do, Abby. Try to pull back on the rot. Try to take in as much power as you can, because if you have some of it, then hopefully that means that's power Anton doesn't have inside there. And she's like, what are you going to do? And it's like, well, I've got to do something in there. I'll figure it out. And as she's pulling out the power, he says, thank you, Abby, and I'm glad we had this time together. So he dives into the Grove, down into the green, the poisoned green at this point, and right there as he lands, Anton's standing. He's already starting to rot again because everything around him is rotted. And Anton's like, you idiot. I already killed this whole place, and you've got like 10 seconds left in you. You stupid, like this, you can't do anything to me. There's nothing left. Everything here is dead. The green is dead, and you'll be dead in moments too. And he says, oh, well, you're wrong, because there's one part of the green that I locked away from you, and I kept it all secret, but I kept the key. And he reaches into his own chest and spreads it open, and now comes this blinding light of green, and when the light dies down, we see standing behind him are all the previous Swamp Things, ready to fight, including dinosaurs, which is badass. So yeah, I like that. I like that as a concept, the fact that he tore down the Parliament, but there's this history of Swamp Things still lives inside of him. That makes sense to me. By the way, Calculus, like, funniest character that's been written, like, ever. I cannot do his lines justice, but, like, as he's running away in the snow, he's just singing to himself, go speed racer, go speed racer. Like, I love him so much. It's a shame he got killed here, because I would have loved to see him popped up elsewhere. It's continuing to impress. I love this book. It's always doing a great job. It's a real shame that next issue is the last issue, but I'm sure it'll go out on just as much a high as I have been riding for the rest of the series. So I'm going to give this one, honestly, 8.5. I really enjoyed it. I really, really did. And I really hope it ends on that high note. So, Swamp Thing. Batman Eternal number 44, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Higgins, and Seeley, art by Aiko. So this issue picks up with the Gotham Central Precinct, and they have a whole bunch of Arkham escapees all in processing, trying to get figured out, and they're like, look, we're talking to them, we're interrogating, trying to figure out what's behind all this stuff, and they're all insane. But we do have a couple who are saying some names that might be helpful. And we see that there's the Ten-Eyed Man, Maxie Zeus, and Magpie. And Magpie seems like she's totally sane. She's like, look, my lawyer just got me a crap deal. Send me to Arkham instead. Like, I'm totally good. And if you want a name, I'll give you a name. And each of them say Milo. Professor Milo. He is a chemist at the Arkham facility. He was in charge of the pharmacy, and he is the one who apparently was causing all of this. So Batman hears this, he gets photos uploaded to the Cal, and he's like, yep, all right, we got an APB out there scanning everything. So the entirety of Gotham is basically all looking for Milo, trying to figure out where he's at, and Batman's just hoping to get a look at him first. So we cut over to Luke Fox's apartment, which is still inherited by a bunch of ghosts, and so he is unspooling a little thread of nth metal that Batman provided him and fusing it into his knuckles on his Batwing suit, and he's like, you want to guess why I'm putting this nth metal onto my knuckles? And he turns around to the ghosts, and he's like, you guys have been keeping me up at all hours. You want me to release you? Come here. And he's just ready to start punching ghosts in the face. We then cut over to the Narrows, where Spoiler is trying to leave Harper Rowe's apartment. And Harper's like, if you leave, I'm going to have to tase you because you're supposed to stay here. And you won't like getting tased. A lot of people piss themselves. And she's like, I just told you that Bruce Wayne is the one who's responsible for all this, and you aren't doing anything because the Bat family is bankrolled by him. I'm getting out of here so that I can tell people the real truth. And they have a bit of an argument briefly, a little bit of a kicking match and punching each other, and ultimately it doesn't get resolved. But we have a taser aimed right at Stephanie's face as Harper's like, 150,000 volts will stop you, and I don't miss twice. So we then cut to Gotham Airport, where Professor Milo is trying to get out of the country, and he's like, oh, can I board? And he's like, yep, and he's going to Caracas. And As he's standing there, he's trying to make his way out the gate. Police officers recognize him. They see him. They're like, wait a minute, that's him. So he goes running. But as he is about to exit out of the building, he's stopped by a bunch of security guards, guns trained on him. He says, I'm unarmed. It's all right. No problem. But as he's standing there, he presses some sort of button in his bag, and this gas fills up the room, and it affects all of the police officers. And this is where things get a little weird. As far as I can tell, it's just a psycho gas. Like, it doesn't make you scared. It's not a fear toxin. And it's not like a Joker thing either. It's just, you start going crazy. And you start saying crazy things. Like, they start talking about, like, oh, we've got some kind of gas weapon. And then the guy says, like, no, gas giants, Jupiter. It's touching us. The red storm goes on and on. Like, it just makes you sound crazy. But Batman busts in through the skylight, and Milo's like, ah, crap. All right. So meanwhile, some of the cops are firing against Batman because they think that he's a threat, what with all the gas. He has to take out the cops because of that, and that gives Milo a chance to somewhat escape. But as he looks back and sees all the cops are getting knocked down, he's like, yeah, expecting the police to stop Batman. I should have known better. So he manages to scale his way up into a escape door, fire escape. And he runs outside onto the tarmac. One of the people's like, hey, you can't be out here. And he injects him with the same drugs again and keeps on running. And as he makes his way out further on the tarmac, he's like, I did it, I'm safe. And then all of a sudden, Bat plane just comes down right over top of him, just being like, surrender or be neutralized. So he's like, I surrender, okay, fine. Some infrared scan shows where his weapons are in his body. And Batman's like, all right, voice command, take everything out that could be a threat. And so the guns on him just start shooting off all of the items that were in his pockets. And he's like, no, my drugs. So then Batman comes in, kicks him down to the ground, just being like, tell me what you did in Arkham. Tell me what's up. And Milo says, please, it was his book. It was a gift. And he doesn't say who the he was, but he says that you got this book that had dark enchantments to transform Arkham. And he doesn't know how it worked, but it was a fusion of magic and science entwined together. And he says the invitation was in the package. And he's like, who gave it to you? And as Milo is like starting to just say some more crazy stuff, he's just like, oh, the world beneath the... And then all of a sudden, ghosts come up out of the ground at Gotham Airport saying, Batman, your time has come. The truth is here. I'll be honest, I completely forgot that the ghost plot was not fully resolved. I thought that was wrapped up when Arkham fell, but no, that's right. The ghosts were just showing up randomly around Gotham, and we got like 2 pages of that like 20 issues ago of like, oh yeah, here's an art museum where a ghost randomly showed up and Batman just punched it out. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy they're wrapping up the loose threads, but this kind of is just an example of where the writing goes a little bit awry sometimes with this many plot threads, is that one of them falls by the wayside, and by the time you want to come back to it, I forget that it existed. And it's not in a way of like, see, we misled you, we made you forget about it, and then we brought it back. It's like, no, you forgot about it. It's been gone. So, yeah. I mean, it's an all right... Drawing-wise, it looks fine. What happens over the issue feels completely disconnected to everything else we've been doing before. And frankly, once we get done with the ghosts halfway through next issue, calling that one now, it's just gonna be like, okay, that was a little mini arc, the same as the nanobots thing, where it's like, we set this up, we kind of forgot that we did, and now we just need to wrap it up as fast as possible. So yeah, I'm gonna say this is 6.5. It's just not quite at that 7 level for me. It still looks fine. I'm a little bit confused by the gas and the drugs, and what does Milo have to do with this? Like, are they making him a villain? Whatever. 6.5. Future's End number 40, written by Azrael Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Patrick Zurcher. So this issue picks up over in Smallville, Kansas, where Superman is zooming into the Kent farm. He grabs the old t-shirt version of his suit and a cape, and he bails back out. And we see Constantine, who was alongside Superman at the end of the last issue, is facing down some brainiac corn creatures is like, oh, you think that you have beaten us, but now that Superman's involved, he inspires us when we know he has our back and whatever. And Constantine takes some of Midge's blood and smears it on his forehead in the shape of like Brainiac's dots. And the corn creatures are like, you mock our master? And he's like, nah, summon one of my own. And this giant ass red pig creature comes out of some fire and says, yeah, I summoned this one. He's gonna go ahead and try to kill me if he has any room in his stomach after he's killed all of you. So we then cut up to the Watchtower, where the Justice League at this point has all assembled after the satellites started getting knocked out, and they're like, okay, so we don't see any threat, but clearly something's knocked out all of our satellites, so like that's a problem, you know? And one of them's just like, well, how do we know it's not the new Firestorm? Like, can we even trust her? And it's Wildfire says that, and one of them's like, all right, that's enough, Wildfire, like we need some help if this is going to be a major threat, and she is powerful. And then all of a sudden, pretty much just right out the window, is a giant ship just warping in. And they're like, oh my god, this is it, we're under attack. It's like, wait, hold on, no. That's Stormwatch. And in comes the Atom, the Engineer, and Hawkman. And it's like, hey guys, we're here to help. And they're like, oh, well, do you guys know what's up? Did you trip the alert? And it's like, no, Brainiac is coming. And one woman's like, what? How would Brainiac trip all the alarms at once? And then all of a sudden, Engineer, who was already a pawn of Brainiac before, starts falling backwards, freaking out. She attacks Hawkman, attacks the Atom, and Cyborg and them are able to see all this and just like, okay, can we get some flyers and some powerful ones out in space to figure out what the hell is going on? So at that point, Engineer gets in front of the camera, just like, oh, there was no need. He is here, and you will be witnesses to his coming. And we see this giant-ass net egg-looking ship thing just come in right above the Watchtower. So out in the East River, we have a ferry going across the boat, and then all of a sudden, crashing down into it with enough speed to break the boat in half is this little sphere that comes from Brainiac. It almost looks like, I don't know, an egg or something like that. And we see, the all this stuff is happening, and we see that the Justice League has set up little cameras to keep track of all these different sensors around the world. And Polaris hears this because he's up on the ship, and he's like, yeah, okay, you're spying on Earth. And it's like, bro, it's monitoring. Shut up. So all across the Earth, these objects are coming down at like Mach speed, causing massive damage. They're destroying airplanes, buildings, streets. Everything's going haywire. And it's like, look, we have no idea what's going on, but it's just smashing into stuff. So Batman, Plastique, and Tim are all running through a park. It's weird to see Batman in the middle of daylight, but he's doing it. And it's just like, look, Plastique, you got to be careful. You're going to get yourself killed if you don't watch your step. And it's like, yeah, well, Batman, I don't think I'm going to die quite yet. I think time's got different plans for me. And Batman turns over to Tim, just being like, keep an eye on her if you can handle that responsibility. And he's like, here we go. This talk again. So at that point, Tim chews him out and says, like, look, what Plastique said about Brother Eye and dystopian future, I'm not buying it. And Batman's like, yeah, Brother Eye would never hurt a soul. Like, it would sooner turn itself off. It's supposed to protect human life. So let's figure out what's going on with Terrific Tech. And they make their way into the building, and everyone's dead. Everyone in the lobby is dead, and we see this robotic figure off in the shadows to the side. It's Plastique. So we see that Angie, the Engineer, is just shooting a hole in the hull, just going nuts, being like, Hawkman's like, you gotta fight it. And he's like, no, he's gonna show up, he's gonna take a sample, and he's gonna leave, and I'm gonna go with him. And she blasts through the hole in the hull. Wildfire and Equinox teleport on the ship. She closes up the hole in the hull, and immediately Cyborg's calling the shots. He's like, all right, Engineer's going towards the big egg thing in the sky. Someone needs to handle what's going on down on Earth as well, because Manhattan's being torn apart. Apparently it's just Manhattan. And Cyborg's like, okay, we're splitting the team. Some of you go down to New York, figure that out. Some of us are going to try to figure out what that giant egg thing in the sky is. And then Superman / Shazam is like, I'm going to New York too. It needs me. And it's like, no, we need a powerhouse hitter up here to watch Dr. Polaris. Like, yeah, it sucks, but we really need you here. He's like, no, I don't want to. It's like, that was an order. You're gonna. So At that point, Dawnstar and some of the other crew go out into space to try to figure out what's going on with this. It looks like Angie is building something on the surface, and very, very quickly it turns into the giant metal skull ship that Brainiac is always seen using. And Hawkman's like, I can hear screams of 1,000 people in there. So Lois is freaking out down on the ground because cell service is gone, everything's falling apart. Just like, well, when Apocalypse attacked, we had time to fight back, but this is going to be like minutes before everything's dead. So Shazam Superman's like, I can't believe I'm stuck up here. This sucks. And Firestorm's like, I agree. We should be down there. We need to stop this disaster. Like, all this stuff is happening. Jason, inside of Firestorm, says they're boring underneath the city and cutting off power, water, sewer. Like, they're forming some sort of energy grid around Manhattan. And we don't know why, but, like, something's happening here. And Shazam's like, screw Polaris. New York needs us. So we see that as New York is being essentially broken off from the rest of the world, out from the middle of the street, right in front of Lois Lane, comes this giant-ass pillar of technology. And she's like, is that thing a bomb or something else? And then from one of the little side pillars off the edge comes this beam of energy that starts materializing some fingers and then an arm, and then all of a sudden it's this giant-ass kaiju-sized Brainiac that she says, that's just God. We've summoned God. So we go to the jets that are flying in, and they're like, okay, armed missiles, get ready to take it on. We're going to try to break this energy grid before it starts. But then before the jets can get there, all of a sudden, a blur zooms past them. And the jet fighter's like, I know this sounds crazy, but I think that's him. The one who saved us all. That's Superman. And we get the power hero shot of bearded Superman flying into the city to save the day. Okay, all the plots have converged onto one. We are literally getting Brainiac is taking Manhattan, and I realize that phrase as I say it without any actual trying to pull that off. I can't say I dislike it. I think that it feels pretty messy getting all the plots to converge here. Like, you got the Terrifitech stuff with Batman, Plastique, and Tim. You got the Stormwatch stuff and all this. Like, it feels messy getting there, but the fact that everything is now 100% focused on this is happening and we need to deal with it. And we're not going to deal with any of like the, oh, but I don't want to be fused with Jason anymore, or, oh, Dr. Polaris might not be such a bad guy. Like, we're just focused on this. No 50 Sue, no nothing else. This is what's happening. I like that. This one was just the messy steps to get there. So I'm going to say this one is 6. It's a low 6, but it's still a 6. I think that there's enough pages in this that were actually like okay to balance out the pages where I'm like, well, that sucks. So that's where I'm coming at. I'm hoping that as this Brainiac arc continues, we don't cut back to the 50 Sue stuff. We don't cut back to Sergeant Rock. Allow us to deal with this problem on its own, and then maybe we can go over to that stuff later. Unless this is going to take us up to the end of the book, in which case, so be it. But I think we got some Brother Eye stuff that's not quite related to Brainiac. So yeah, anyway, 6. Earth 2 World's End number 18, written by Wilson, Bennett, and Johnson, art by a whole bunch of people. So this issue picks up at the Geneva fire pit, and Batman's talking to Huntress and just like, all right, we're getting to pick up in like an hour. We'll be fine. And they like check in on each other a little bit, just like, you good? And she's like, yeah, thanks, by the way. And he's like, did you say thanks? And she's like, yeah, thank you for saving my life. So then we cut over to Adam's Haven, where a bunch of the new parademons have just been killed off panel by Red Tornado and the super people. And Kara's basically like, look, we're super people. Let's go up to Apocalypse and just kick some ass. Let's just do that. Why are we fighting these small fights down here? And Val-Zod is like, look, I get that sounds cool, but I'm thinking that probably is exactly what they want us to do. We need to focus on defending the people of Earth. So they point out that these proto-Furies are just puppets, mindless like machines and whatnot. And Red Tornado Lois is like, but I am but a machine. How are we so different, all things considered? And Karen's like, you're a human in a robot body. They're just being puppeted to Darkseid's will. There's a clear difference here. This is not a plot thread. Please drop it. So at that point, we see just this. I mean, as they're talking about that, it's just this cool shot of Darkseid who's looking super pissed off. I don't know if that's actually happening or if that's just the representation of they're being puppeted by Darkseid. So we see Helena and Batman get out of the helicopter. He gets a call from Jimmy Olsen. And he's like, oh my God, kid, you're still alive. That's freaking awesome. That's insane. And he's like, yeah, same. Also, good news. The fire pits are going cold all over the earth. Our plans to evacuate are doing great, and we're managing to stave off Doomsday. So that's freaking sweet. We're going to do fine. By the way, though, I've got something interesting about you. Bruce's daughter, Helena, we found like a will or a map or something, but it's basically saying that she needs to go find Oliver Queen. And so Batman's like, got it. And he steps into the Red Cross tent that's been set up where Helena's like recovering. And she's like, I look awful, don't I? And he's like, nah, you look just like your dad. And that's really unsettling for me. Like, you got Catwoman's like general features, but you got your dad's jawline, which I'm looking at that and I'm like, if you have Batman's jawline, you got like the most chiseled jaw imaginable. And as he takes off his own cowl, she's like, yeah, you look like him too. But she's not looking at his face. She's looking at the cowl. So back on Amazonia, we see that Fury is using her, like, new god ability to, as Mr. Miracle puts it, or not Mr. Miracle, Mr. Terrific puts it, reach into other dimensions and step on solid ground from there via the multiverse. And as he's doing analyzing of that, he manages to actually make a pair of shoes that can do that. They reach into the multiverse and use that energy. And he's like, cool, check it out. And she's like, have we just been wasting time for you to make a new pair of shoes? And he's like, no. I've been running tests and stuff. This is just to keep me busy in the meantime. So, yeah, don't worry about it. We're doing good. And they make some comment about how Fury's like, I'm a new god, and you're pretty comparable, what with all your technologies. And he's like, thanks, but I don't really want to be a new god. I'm a human. So Batman tells her about Ollie Queen, and he's like, yeah, what do you remember about him? It's like, nothing. He hung around Bruce Wayne, not Batman, and also he drank a lot. That's about all I got. So he's saying, like, look, we got to go find him. That's fine. But she's like, I want to go find Kara. I want to be with her again. He's like, I know you do, but we got to go handle this first. We got to put a face to the name. So Jimmy calls up Sato at Adam's Haven and is like, hey, we've got an idea. This ship that is multidimensional and allows to take people off the planet. I'm still working on it, so just keep doing what you're doing. And she's like, awesome, keep me in the loop. And she turns to Steve and is just like, yeah, see, we got some hope going on here. And he's like, I mean, to some extent, but at the same time, this place is getting increasingly unstable, and we've got like hours before another cataclysmic strike. So it turns out that the super people were already here and they're like helping reinforce this place, try to keep it up to snuff. And it's just like, well, they give me confidence and they just wave back like, happy to help. So then we go over to Apocalypse and Darkseid's sitting on his throne and he's like, oh, these stupid humans. They keep on thinking that they're making differences here. It's all stupid. And Darkseid's approached by one of his goons being like, hey, we've lined up the fire pits. You ready to fire? And he's like, yep, let's do it. He drops the name of the book. He says, the world's end has arrived. There is only Apocalypse. So turns out that the fire pits are now geostationary locked on both planets. And so they fire up what's called the Terraformer, and it just immediately starts like destroying Earth even faster than before. So Flash is like rushing to get everybody inside. Hawkgirl's like, something's going on. They're firing down some stuff. It's crazy. And then they see this giant cube inside of one of the pillars of fire. And it's like, did you see that? What is it? But they don't have any idea. They think they just launched something at Earth. They're not sure what it is yet. Meanwhile, over in Russia, the avatars are like, okay, something bad is going on. It looks like something's growing from the Earth. Is this because of Death's child, the Death Spawn? And Green Lantern's like, I think Death Spawn's going to mess with our parliaments, guys. And they're like, okay, but our parliaments are not in the Earth. Like, you can't just they're not in a location. It's like an ethereal sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, Yolanda bends over. She's not doing hot. Grundy's chest just explodes out from the middle. Sam just fades into the wind, and the blue avatar just kind of fades away. And immediately inside of Alan's head, he hears the Green Parliament just being like, hey, could you show up here right now? We really need your help. Please, 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 please. And he's like, cool, send me. I'm good. Bring me to you. So he gets teleported to where the parliaments are, and we see Deathspawn has attacked all of the other parliaments and is about to attack the Green as well. So, oopsie. Seems like he could get there. It's fine. It's all right. Look, I said this maybe like 5-6 issues ago, but there was a period of this book where it was just no wins. Like, not even for an issue. There wasn't even like the temporary, like, we did it. We did, so like, every single thing where they thought they did something okay was immediately blasted back with a, no, screw you. It's actually awful. This feels at first glance like that same sort of thing. Like, everyone is in an okay spot now, and then Darkseid turns up the heat and says, okay, but actually, your planet's still doomed. But it feels different because we've had like 2 to 3 issues now of, okay, we're starting to feel like we got a positive thing going on. Like, they nuked Apocalypse and it didn't end up working, but they survived it. And then Helena managed to get out, and like Superman saved the day and shut off the fire pits. There's a bunch of good things that happened for them to now turn around and say, okay, but we're doubling up on destroying the Earth. I think that's okay this time around, because obviously this is going to end with Earth 2 being destroyed. It's in the damn title. I'm not saying that we need to end this with a happy ending, but I think that giving that moment of hope, and especially now that they're talking about this multi-dimensional spaceship out in space that's going to save survivors, that's the goal. That's what we can work for. Even if Earth gets destroyed, it's not about saving Earth. It's just about getting to that ship. I'm down with that. That is now establishing a solid one. So whatever else happens in this book, as long as that doesn't get destroyed and they're just left to sit in their own tears, I'm okay with whatever direction this takes. So I'm going to give this one, it's still like a 6.5 to me. I can't quite call it a 7, but it's on the right track. It's at least making itself interesting, but like, I hope they can still mix it up a little bit. Because if it's just going to be more of like, we got to get the survivors to a safe space, and they just keep on shuffling people around, because at first it was like, get everybody on the train, now get everybody underground, now get everybody into space. Like, if we're just going to keep doing that, just get them there. So we don't have to do the same plot 4 times. And that's it. That is all the comics put out by DC Comics this February 4th, 2015. And this is your official reminder. Heads up, listen up. For anyone who happens to be lucky enough to be in any sort of a relationship, I know it's rare in our little subculture here of comic geekdom, but if you are, this is your reminder. Do something for Valentine's Day. Make some plans now, unless you have explicitly talked to your partner and said that you are not doing anything for Valentine's Day. Do something for Valentine's Day. You're welcome. Anyway, all that said and done, it's a small week, but luckily enough, next week, it's even smaller. Well, kind of. We have 12 comics coming out next week, but one of them is the Harley Quinn Valentine's Day special, which I'm pretty sure is like 70 pages, and all of it is written in the same very verbose, one joke per panel kind of Harley Quinn way, and I'm not going to say I'm not looking forward to it. I think that it could be fun, but like, do Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti ever sleep? Like, I get that they are a married couple, and like, they're able to, they can actually work together on writing this stuff while still doing married couple things. But like, goddamn, man, maybe just go to the Poconos or something. Stop with this. It's a special every month. So yeah, That's a thing, and also included there in no particular order, we have Green Lantern Corps, Justice League 3000, Justice League United, World's Finest, New Suicide Squad, Secret Six, Constantine, Clarion, and then our 3 weeklies, Batman Eternal, Future's End, and World's End. Strangely enough, if you don't include Batman Eternal, because I don't count it in the normal like family books, this is the first week, I think, over the entirety of the show that has not had either a Bat book or a Superman book. We kick up with Green Lantern Corps. Like, there's a couple of like Justice League, some like, we were getting the second issue of Secret Six, which that was delayed by a month. So yeah, very interesting. No Bat books. That's a first for DC pretty much ever. So yeah, be sure to check out that. But if you have any comments that you would like to share on any of the comics I talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and leave them down if you are watching the video version in the comments down below. Otherwise, we have a bunch of places you can reach us. We have a Discord, we have a Patreon, we have a subreddit. Feel free to hit up any of those, and your comments will be read out to the class like passing notes. I'm going to open up the episode and say, this person says that I can get free Robux if I go to this website and plug in my social security number. And by God, I did. And wouldn't you know it, now I have my identity stolen. Thank you for that comment section. That didn't actually happen. It was Bitcoin. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say for this episode. It is a very light week next week, so hopefully I can keep you entertained the entirety of the 2 hours that you expect me to fill. And I hope that I entertained you for this week's 2 hours. But if I didn't, lower your standards. It's not going to get better at any point in this last couple of 16 months I got to the end of the show. All right, I've just delayed the inevitable for no reason, so let me just go ahead and say thank you very much for watching. Be sure to tune in next week. I hope that you had a good time. Be sure to interact with this video and or podcast positively with thumbs up or stars or whatever the hell you see fit. And I hope to see you next time. Always try to remember that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.